Littleton Board of Health meeting. It's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started with the COVID-19 update by Katrina Hagberg-Wilcox. Hi, Katrina.
It's the other way around, just so you know.
Oh, of course it is. Sorry.
That's okay. All right, let's see here. Sharing my screen.
Can see it.
I'll just dive right in. So as you've probably heard from the news, the Omicron sublineage BA2 is now the dominant variant in the US. 90% of the cases in New England are BA2. BA2 has similar symptoms as BA1, which can vary based on whether vaccination status, health conditions, age, and prior COVID infection. And it appears to spread more easily than the original Omicron. So quick transmission between people remains a concern for this. It doesn't necessarily appear to be more severe, although that is being assessed right now for the US, and reinfection is possible. So if we're looking at the state data now, we have the trends from the DPH. Cases have started to rebound and come back up over the last week and a half or so. The 7-day average is about 1,200 cases per day. And I want to keep in mind that this does not take into account any positives that are found on at-home rapid tests, antigen tests. So this is a known undercount. And this has been actually slowly increasing over the last 2 to 3 weeks, I'd say. Test positivity has trended higher over the same period of time, the last few weeks as well, but it's now 3.42, so still below that 5%. But it's definitely trending upwards like cases. Hospitalizations are averaging about 236 per day. This data is actually for this screenshots from yesterday. So this actually got a little higher as of today's report, and deaths are low, averaging around 4 a day. So looking at the Boston Wastewater biobot measurements, this is again a form of surveillance that doesn't rely on people going out to get tested or reported into the system. So it's another signal about what's happening in our area. And again, this data trends shows that things are coming back up. If you see of the curve, it's at a low level right now, but when you look at a much more closer zoom in, we're definitely on the way back up for both the north and the south regions of Boston. So things are trending back up in the sewers as well. When we look at cases by age group over the last 6 weeks, you can see that we flattened out in early March. We kind of hit the bottom, and over the last 2-week period, we've started rebounding in almost all of the groups, not all of them, but most of them, especially the younger age groups. So at this point, all age groups have trended slightly higher, now approximately back to the same point where we were at the end of February. And this last 2-week period was March 20th to April 4th. And that during that period, the 20 to 29 age group had the highest rates. During that period, by a long shot, they actually were quite higher. So things are circulating again, hitting all age groups. When we look at hospitalizations, they've been pretty steady since early March. So this is like a flat period for hospitalizations, but again, that's a lagging indicator of what's happening. It does seem to have a slight increase over the last couple days. So that's something we need to watch for a little bit longer to see if that's a trend that will continue to increase or just a blip in the radar. 39% of these were primarily hospitalized for COVID-19, and COVID-19 patients in the ICU are low. So hospitals are looking steady right now, but keep in mind that we need to see this going out a little bit longer. One thing I do want to note is that when I talk to friends who work in hospitals, they all report people who are there that they are caring for who about 2 to 3 weeks after an infection end up in the hospital for complications with blood clots or vascular related issues, exacerbation of diabetes, things like that, like the COVID infection triggered something that landed them in the hospital a few weeks later. So although the COVID infection itself didn't put them in the hospital, it was a triggering event that caused a health related issue that required hospital care. So that is happening quietly. And then when we look at the CDC's new community levels, these are the metrics that they are now using. And we look at it for the map, most everywhere in the US is now classified as low. All of Massachusetts is classified as low. That said, the 7-day case average for Middlesex County and Littleton, when we looked at just our area, was 150 per 100,000, which is nearing that 200 per 100K threshold that when we start looking at the hospital data would factor into our color. And cases are trending higher over this period of time. So we know the case counts are undercounts. So we know the case counts are higher than what's being reported into the data. And so we're kind of getting to that point where cases are heading up, and we'll see what happens with the hospitals in the next few weeks to see what happens to these colors. But at this point in time, per the CDC's strategies, individuals are recommended to stay up to date on vaccines, improve ventilation in indoor spaces, testing if symptomatic, following isolation and quarantine guidelines as indicated. And individuals who are immunocompromised or at high risk should have a plan to do rapid testing, get access to antivirals, and wear a good quality mask when they're around others. And then community level prevention strategies, including distributing vaccines, keeping that going, improving ventilation in indoor public locations, and making sure people have access to testing. So if we look closer at Littleton, Littleton has kind of had this period of calm for the last 6 weeks or so, since the end of February. And for this is the data based on last Thursday's DPH report. So for the last 2-week period, Littleton had 21 cases reported. Again, remember that's not capturing any at-home rapid tests. So we know this is an undercount. And so the only way somebody is going to get into this data is if they go and get a PCR test that gets reported in Maven. In terms of school cases, not all school cases end up in Maven, which is what the DPH uses for their numbers. So if a school case is identified, I confirmed this with the schools. If a school case is identified through pooled testing or symptomatic testing at school, then those cases get reported into Maven as well as DESI. But if a case is reported to the school as found on an at-home rapid test, that does not get into Maven, but it does get reported to DESI and on our school dashboard. So the school dashboard has all the cases, but that doesn't mean this town count captures all the cases that were in the schools, if that makes sense. It's a little confusing. And people can report their cases and should report their cases to their physicians so they can put it in their medical records. But that case does not get entered into Maven. So their physicians are not required to report that to Maven. So this data is missing a lot of missing cases right now. We just don't know how many. So when we're looking at trends for not only Littleton, but our area, just like we've done, Littleton as average daily incidence rate was 15 per 100,000 as of April 2nd, that 2-week period ending April 2nd. All other areas we track were trending in a similar pattern, similar rate to us, between 13 and 20 cases per 100,000 for the average daily incidence rate. And test positivity was trending higher for all of those areas we tracked too, but was still low, between 2 and 3%. So again, everything's kind of trending the same way. No one is an outlier at this point. And then Littleton school data, this is for I've shown the last 6 weeks, excuse me. This is as of reported up to Friday, April 8th. And again, you can get this information directly from the dashboard every Friday. So for the last 6 weeks, cases in the district have bounced around a bit, up and down, week to week, but there have been some isolated upticks in certain schools. Like you can see there was an 8 count in the middle school 4 weeks ago, but they went right down to 2. So there's just no clear trend that is formed, and whatever kind of bounces up has come right back down, which is good. So the 2-week prevalence, which the schools are reporting on their dashboard, is low. It's 1% or lower for each school. So again, we're doing well in the schools at this point. So I wouldn't say that, given all of this data, that Littleton has an explosion of cases, but we definitely have, we're in a spot where things are starting to be a little less reliable and not trending down anymore. We're at least trending slightly up over the last few weeks. And so here's the vaccination coverage. This is the data from last week's DPH report. I have to say there's no major changes in this data for any age group since I last reported in mid-March. 87.4% of Littleton residents have received their primary series, with another 9.2% having at least one dose. And when we look according to population, 56% of our population has had a booster dose. And if looking at boosters a little more closely, again, this hasn't changed significantly since we last were here. So approximately 87% of Littleton's fully vaccinated population were eligible to be boosted at this point compared to beginning of November. And of that, 75% have been boosted, another 25% have yet to be boosted, but are eligible. So this hasn't moved, unfortunately. And I know that the vaccination booster recommendations have changed a little bit. So anyone 50 or older may choose to get a second booster. If you haven't had your first booster, I highly recommend doing that. If you haven't had your primary series, I highly recommend starting to get those, because those the vaccines have been highly effective at preventing severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Those are the major things vaccines are designed to protect against, and they're doing well. So go get boosted or vaccinated if you have not yet. And then I just want to end, given that the trends are starting to look like they're going up for our state or county, New England and Littleton, data is a little more uncertain, but might be trending along with everyone else like we have all along. And the wastewater, Boston wastewater is getting higher. We're starting to see things starting to move a little bit. So at this point, I think it's fair to say that trends are changing, and I don't have a crystal ball to say how bad the next little uptick will be. Hopefully it will be little, but we're uncertain right now. But what I am certain about is that we're about to enter another holiday weekend where family gatherings occur. And we have seen time and time again that this is a chance where when multi-generational households get together, that outbreaks can happen within that family gathering. And when you have varying levels of ages and health status, that some people may get very sick. So I just wanted to end tonight with a reminder that it is still possible to take action to lower your risk of transmission at family gatherings. I think it's really important to communicate with those you're gathering with, to talk about what your plan is, what your comfort level is, things like that. Importantly, if you are sick or have symptoms, even if they seem like cold symptoms, stay home or get a test so you know whether you are COVID positive. Stay up to date on your vaccines, cold, flu. There's a lot of stuff going around. We don't want to just spread germs to everyone. And hopefully the weather will be good to us this weekend. So those holiday gatherings could be outside or with windows open to help improve ventilation. And if you are specifically if you are at risk of severe disease, immunocompromised, your older age, and I think it's really important to consider wearing a well-fitted respirator, like a KN95, a K95, something that your best quality and fit mask that you can tolerate when you're indoors around others you don't live with. And if you do get infected, just remember that there are tools that we didn't have a few months ago. So there are people who will be eligible for antivirals and other treatments that we weren't able to use a short while ago. But those rely on prompt testing and action. So make sure that if you have symptoms, you're getting tested to make sure that you are not infected. And if you are infected, that you can talk to your doctor to get the care you need. And that's it for tonight.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? Comments? I just have one. As schools are a very important sort of leading indicator of ours, something we've been looking at over the past couple of years. I'm just curious why, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but why is it that cases that are diagnosed at home and reported to schools, over the telephone, on the absent line, why do those not get into Maven? Is it just a disconnect between The
I don't know if it's
Shoba and nurses.
That's a really interesting question. I'm going to hypothesize here. I don't know the answer to that directly. No one's told me. But my guess is if we're not going to capture that at-home test for adults, why do that for kids? Like, I think they're trying to standardize the definition that gets into Maven. I see Dan's shaking his head, which makes me feel better about my answer. My hypothesis might be reasonable given how we define things. I think it's to standardize what cases are reported.
Except that information is quite useful in making decisions regarding other things.
Regarding schools, yeah. I mean, the school is reporting the cases to us via the dashboard. So we can say right now that we know the cases in the school and we know some of the cases in the town, but we don't know all the cases in the school and we don't know all the cases in the town. So it's hard. It's at the point where the data quality is going downhill. So it's hard to make educated decisions as an individual to say, what is my risk today and what should I be doing to protect myself? Or, we're going to see older family members this weekend. So what do we need to do to, what is the actual risk that our family might bring it to them? So
I assume it's components of both. One, it's not laboratory testing. And two, you definitely would not be sending in all the negatives.
True.
So it becomes a partial data set if you could report your home positives. It's still valuable, but I would guess that Maven would say no, because then we don't have the right denominator.
It's always a denominator issue.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm interested in getting to the point of what actions, if any, should this board take, associating whatever action with how the data, the fact that we don't know what's going to happen, and by the time we get there, quote, it may be too late. And I don't know what too late is because I don't know what metric we want to use, if any, for doing anything. So my question is this is very useful information, more than we might all realize, because the sewage data especially is very instructive. And if you treat it in a certain way, it looks even more, shall we say, predictive than you might think. And my colleagues in California and Washington have now turned their math tricks loose. So we've been working on a couple of angles to this, but let's put it this way. What does this board, if it wants to, want to do? Let's say if the cases either in the sewage system or our best estimate of where we are, reported and unreported cases around us, what is it we could do, if anything? What's our objective?
I mean, stopping the spread is the objective. Probably limiting indoor gatherings or putting different mitigation strategies in place in those settings to limit the spread. Just off the top of my head.
Okay. Maybe we don't have time for this tonight, or you don't want to do it, but what constitutes the trigger for making the decision? Because by the time you think you've got town-wide spread or area-wide spread, that's what you got. You got to area-wide spread.
I think we get to answer that question at 8 o'clock when we discuss the ID decision support tool.
But Matt wants something to put up there that provides guidance, right? So it's the tool exists. Mm-hmm. So the question is what is going to be whether we have the tool or not, does the board want to do anything, whether we have the tool or not, in response to the data that gets reported at our quote, our next meeting, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. At 8 o'clock, I want to talk less about the tool itself and more about, okay, now how are we going to use it, operationalize it, as it were?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Anything else for Katrina? I know she has to hit the road, so to speak. Well, thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, Katrina.
Have a nice April break. Great job. See you soon.
Well. Bye.
Stay safe. It's 7:15, well, it's 7:20 now, but we have a 7:15 discussion regarding the opt-out for town sewer with LELWD. Who's here for that? Corey? Could you please promote Corey, Dave?
He's on the way.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Corey? Yep.
How you doing?
Well,
Thanks for having me tonight. I think I've met a couple of you, but not all of you. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Corey Godfrey. I'm the Water and Sewer Superintendent at LELWD. I also have Matt Silverman here with me. I appreciate you having us tonight. I just wanted to give you all sort of a quick update on where we are with the design of the new Littleton Common Sewer System, and then describe a couple of things that are going on and how the Board of Health might be involved going forward in some of those things.
do you need to share your screen?
Yeah, if I can.
Yeah, Dave, can you make that possible? Please.
Should be able to.
Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. All right. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. All right. So this is, I'm going to email this to you all afterwards. This is fairly text heavy, so I'm not going to read all of it, but I figured I would just kind of go through it and summarize each page essentially. And then after I send it to you all, you can, peruse it at your leisure outside of this meeting. But one of the things, well, first I'll step back. I'll just give you a quick update. We're basically nearing the 90% design stage for the Littleton Common Sewer System. So as you might know, we've been working with the engineering firm CDM Smith on the design. We're currently very heavy into the permitting phase with Mass DEP, with the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, the Historical Commission. So we're expecting to finish design and permitting in the next couple of months here and to be bidding the project this summer, with construction expected to begin as early as September, potentially. Barring any supply chain issues and that sort of thing with the contractors. So that's sort of where we're at in a real quick nutshell in the process. We have developed sewer use regulations that are on our website. I can also send you a copy of those later. And those go into some detail regarding sort of the process for how properties within the sewer district apply to be customers, and some of the regulations that go along with that.
Can you scroll down a bit for us?
Sorry, yeah. So this first page here that I wanted to kind of go over, this is sort of an area of active interest at the moment. So this is an excerpt from the legislation that established the Littleton Common Sewer Division. And it has what's called an opt-out provision, which you've probably heard talked about quite a bit. This was before the water department got involved. This legislation was, I think, spearheaded by the select board at the time. And then it obviously went to the state legislature and was adopted in 2020. So this opt-out provision, it essentially allows residential or nonprofit properties or property owners within the sewer districts to opt out of being a customer of the sewer system, but only under certain specific conditions that are outlined here. All of the commercial and industrial customers are required to connect and required to pay a betterment fee. They have no choice. But the residential and nonprofit properties have this option where essentially bullet A here says if they can provide a passing Title V inspection of their existing septic system, then they're able to opt out. Option B says, even without that passing inspection, if the system was installed after December 31st, 2017, and they sign an affidavit stating that the existing system is operating in an acceptable condition, then they can opt out. And then option C is basically if it's, vacant land has like a conservation restriction on it or something like that, then they can opt out. And then the bottom provision here, if you can see that, says that opt-out decision must be in writing, and the property owner must acknowledge that they understand that it's a permanent decision. They cannot connect to the system in the future, and even a future property owner, if they were to sell that property, cannot connect to the system in the future unless they get not just a vote of the Board of Water Commissioners, but a vote at town meeting. So it's a pretty high bar. So it's a serious decision they need to make. And it's also a very important piece of information for us to have now as opposed to later, since we need to know who we're connecting before we bid the project out, number one, but also we need to know the number of customers we're going to have in order to calculate the betterment fee that will be assessed to every property that connects. And so what we've done is, if I go to the next page here, this letter went out today. And then I'm not going to read the whole thing or make you read it all right now. It's 3 pages long, but it essentially lets the customers or the potential customers know essentially what I just described to you in more layman's terms, and invites them to a meeting on April 27th at the Littleton Police Department in the community room, where we'll discuss in more detail and answer all the questions that everybody might have about connecting. And then we provide some information here on the second page with some cost estimates, just very wide ranges of costs at this point. And like I said a few minutes ago, the main reason for that wide range in costs. So here, for example, betterment fees are going to be somewhere between $7,000 and $21,000. That's a very wide range. We can't calculate the exact betterment fee until we know how many properties are connecting. And then we let them know in this table down here some of the other costs. So there's the betterment fee. They don't need to pay that $7,000 to $21,000 all at once. It can be spread out over the 30-year duration of the loan that the town will be taking out to build the sewer system, which makes it a much more manageable $244 to $708 a year. Lets them know that they will need to decommission their septic system and connect to the public sewer at their cost. So that's the work that would happen on their private property. And estimates we got for that are between $6,250 and $8,750. And then letting them know that there will be also a monthly sewer use bill, much like they currently get a monthly electric bill or quarterly water bill. And we're estimating that to be somewhere around $100 to $150 a month. And so we do go ahead and describe this opt-out process to them. And then on this next page, this is the actual opt-out form that we developed with town council. So it's a very simple form, but it makes clear, the serious nature of the decision. And down here, lets them know what documentation they need to provide to us.
Corey, this letter didn't go out yet, did it?
It's going out tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a problem.
You got a problem.
Yeah, you got a big problem.
Don't send it.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
Go ahead, you start.
No, we got a memo today from the agent for the Littleton Board of Health, Jim Greffey, who went through the state regulations concerning septic septic / sewer system.
Maybe I should let me read Jim's comments. Would that be appropriate?
Sure. Why don't you do that? Go ahead. That's great.
Yeah, Kevin, since it's a little longer, do you want to share it so people can absorb it both ways?
Sure. So I can figure it out. Oh, it's in Adobe. Sorry, got a lot of things going on here. All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Title V directs local boards of health not to issue permits for new or upgraded sewage disposal systems when sewer is available. So right there, the permanence of an opt-out. seems like it's not going to be a good fit. So I conducted a review of the files for the LELWD regarding properties on list to potentially opt out of connecting to the municipal sewer when it is installed in the streets where these properties are located. The staff at LELWD can explain the creation of the list, but I raised some concerns with allowing properties to opt out of the sewer line connection and suggested they speak with the Board of Health and possibly Town Council regarding the opt-out process. Here are my concerns. Number one, Title V directs local boards of health not to issue permits for new or upgraded sewage disposal systems when sewer is available. See the applicable section of Title V provided below. Applicability. No new system shall be constructed and no new system shall be upgraded or expanded if it is feasible to connect to the facility or any portion of the facility for which system approval is sought to a sanitary sewer, except in the following circumstances, in particular to promote recharge of stressed basins, improve low stream flow, or address other local water resource needs. The system is an alternative system approved for the use pursuant to 310 CMR 15.280 through 15.288, and the department has made the determination that any person using such alternative system need not connect the facility to such sanitary sewer. B, the system fully complies. Local upgrade approval unless issued pursuant. Let me go to the next one. The current property owners who opt out will be aware of the choice to opt out, but subsequent owners may not know and feel they have the right to connect. How will this be addressed, particularly if the site presents challenges to the installation of a replacement system? 3, the legislation for the sewer district has some vague standards for determining the functionality of current systems for the houses. Choosing to opt out, who is going to make these determinations?
Yeah, that's so. I don't know as though that conflicts with. I mean, well, so first of all, I should say that nothing I just described is anything that we developed. It's actually state legislation now. So
no, I understand that. I don't understand. Well, I kind of understand why the opt-out clause is in there to begin with.
Neither do I.
I mean, it's in there to get the thing passed, is why it was in there.
Probably.
You know, so but from a public health standpoint, it doesn't really make any sense, and it doesn't really do any good. Yeah, I would agree. I know you've got a political situation on your hands, but that's my opinion, and I'll open it up to other board members to discuss. So, Mike, if you want to finish your thought, I'm sorry for cutting. No.
My only thought was that since I was around and fairly active in pushing for the sewer and in on those meetings, it turns out it's economics. Most people have the idea when they see the numbers that the cost of being hooked onto the sewer is onerous and having their own septic system is somehow better. However, if you look at the numbers, not the case. Yeah. It looks hard, and also absent any sort of what we'll call low interest or interest-free loans that can be made available to, as it were, absorb the, shall we say, upfront cash. It's a cash flow problem for many people. Somebody pictures having to write a check for $35,000 or $15,000 all at once or $8,000 all at once. It's understandably not very attractive, but under the circumstance that we're talking about, it doesn't take much to, as it were, address that. So all I'm trying to say is that I think this ought to be brought to the attention, not just of your group, Corey, because you're responsible for getting the thing running. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much you're involved in the mechanics of the opt-out, opt-in, but I definitely think you ought to go back to town council and go back to the the select board immediately and let them know about this, because obviously someone who's just put in a septic system is not going to be affected and wants to opt out. As I read this, they're cool. They're great. Yeah. It's going to be the people who are a block away or 2 blocks away from where the system is first going in, and later it's going to go in and all the rest. As their systems fail.
It's a permanent opt-out. So yeah, as the systems fail.
As the system failed, according to this, the circumstances are very prescribed for them not to be able to have to hook up to the sewer system.
Yeah, so it's not that they can't, it's that it's very difficult. They'd have to get a town meeting vote to allow it. Yeah. But I think they would have a very good case to make if their system's failing, obviously. And what we have here is essentially, I don't know if I'd call it a conflict, but it's maybe a conflict between 2 state laws, which there's nothing at all that we can specifically do about that. You know, our board and the select board can't change state legislation without
Well,
going through the whole process of it.
the legislation may be invalid. You realize that? Because
I don't think it's invalid. I think it's what it says is you need a vote from our board and town meeting to connect.
I think to make things easier, go ahead,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, my concern is the word permanent. That's what caught my eye. And so if I'm an owner and it says permanent, I can opt out permanently, and I opt out and my system fails and I decide to put in a new one. But the Board of Health says, we don't want to approve that because Title V says you should connect to sewer. Then that person comes back and says, no, I was allowed to permanently opt out. And that's where I see the legal sticking point now.
And the Board of Health gave its vote in support of the sewer project due to the fact that this was going to be for the betterment of public health, reduce the nitrogen loading and make a better situation for our groundwater.
Yeah.
Dan, go ahead. I know you wanted to say something.
No, that same piece of some of the mechanics of it that Matt mentioned, that okay, we're fine now, you get a new system, it fails. Then what the choices are, that yep, you can go before the water commissioners and town meeting and request, but that could potentially be 6 months to a year, depending on where you happen to fall and can you get onto the warrant. And it's a bit of a dice roll. How long-term, so you can permanently opt out and then next year I sell my home, is there a deed restriction requirement or a notification requirement so that I buy the house, my system fails 6 months in, and now I find out that under Title V, I can't get a new Title V permit to build, and I'm looking at 6 months potential before I can even get approval to connect to septic or to sewer, assuming that the system has capacity and I get permission from everyone to do it. That house is now basically condemned. It's not habitable. So that person's now lost their home. Legally, it's pretty clear. You can permanently opt out. Legislation says you can, but the risk if you do that is that if you have a problem and you fail, you either now need to build your own septic system or hope the town meeting approves your connection at some point.
Yeah.
Legally, it's very, very clear. It's the real-time individual impact is pretty significant, and certainly the next owner's piece, they didn't permanently give up the access, they purchased a home, and so how is that, and that's be a town council question of really how is that passed on? Is that permanent for the current owner? Is that permanent tied to the property? And then how is that registered? Is it a deed restriction? How is that registered that the new owner would ever know 5 years or 10 years or 20 years from now oh, what do you mean I can't hook up the septic to the sewer system? Like, nope, 20 years ago, Dan Kane said he didn't want to spend his 10 grand to connect, so he didn't. Now I own their house and I'm out of luck.
Can I make a suggestion? As far as I know, maybe Matt is also an attorney. I'm not also an attorney. Can I suggest that this just goes? I'm not sure about the legality of what the select board did and what the legislature did. The legislature is known to make a lot of laws that conflict with each other, and they get resolved pretty quickly when someone tells them, generally the attorney general or someone in the staff says, you got to fix this. So I think Corey's got the idea. This is not in our pay grade. So I suggest that the simplest thing to do is to get this to the attention of town council and the select board ASAP. And it could be this is a tempest in there are lots of ways around this or whatever. And maybe Dan's right. Maybe it's all perfectly legal to torture people with this, but
If the board has an appetite, I think we can solve a lot of problems for voting to repeal the opt-out clause.
That's way beyond our scope.
Yeah, the Board of Health doesn't have authority to do that. That would have to be a state legislature decision, which would take a year and a half minimum. So that's not going to happen.
That's really what needs to happen. There shouldn't even be.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree for sure. That should have never been in there. And unfortunately, the water department had no input on this legislation, but that's the way it was. And so that's how it happened. And so we're sort of stuck with it now. But I can see ways to make it work, the mechanics of it work. But like you all said, we should talk to town council about that and see if they agree. So I'll make sure to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, you have my support to get rid of that clause. So let us know.
So it's okay. Yeah, if it's all right with you folks, we'll move on to the next piece of this. If we have another 5 minutes or so to go through this.
Yep, good.
And I will be sure to talk to town council about that tomorrow. That is an important few points you brought up there. So that's just the form. We'll go right past that. Let's see. So the other piece I wanted to just bring to your attention, kind of give you a heads up. It's a little ways off in the future, but not that far. So this is section 5 of the state legislation, the same legislation we were just discussing. So it gives the Board of Water Commissioners the sole discretion to determine which property owners will be added, but it specifies that applications for connecting will be reviewed by a representative of the Board of Health, a representative of the Planning Board, and the general manager of the Littleton Water Department or their designees. So it could be the health agent, the town planner, and myself, for example. And then those 3 entities would present a recommendation to the Board of Water Commissioners regarding that application. So I just wanted to make you aware of that if you weren't already. I can't imagine we'll be getting applications to connect until at least 2 years from now. Construction will have to be nearing completion by the time we'll be taking applications from people. But just to give you a heads up, you should start thinking about that probably, and how, as a board, you would like to deal with that, who you might want to designate to participate in that process. Because when the system first goes online, there will be a huge flurry of applications. It'll be, probably somewhere near 100 applications that will come in a month's time, and it'll be a lot of work to review those in that period. And like I said, it's probably 2 years away from now. And just real quick, this is one of the appendices in our sewer use regulations. This is the actual application form that potential customers would fill out and submit. And I'll just go through quickly because I know we have a limited time here. And I will send this all to you afterwards so you can review it at your leisure later. Keeps going. It's I think it's a 4-page application. And then finally, last piece I wanted to make sure to cover tonight was, so this is, state regulations here, specifying that when a system is being a septic system is being abandoned, which it would be if the customer is going to be connecting to the municipal sewer system, that they need to, file an application with the local Board of Health. And I had a conversation with Jim Gareffi about this piece of it, and he had sent me an example of such a document from the town of Lunenburg, which is here. This is their septic system abandonment permit. That's just an example one. As far as I know, Littleton does not have such an application. I could be wrong. So if you don't have one, that's another thing maybe you should start thinking about, because there will be quite a few system abandonments at that same time. Like I said, we'll be getting 100 applications to connect to the municipal sewer system. At that same time, you should be receiving 100 or so applications to abandon septic systems. And that whole process, of course, is under your purview, not the Board of Water Commissioners, as far as abandoning septic systems. So just another sort of heads up to start thinking about. Again, that's probably 2 years from now. But you might want to think about developing a form similar to this. Like I said, this was from Jim Gareffi, so he could provide additional information on that. That's all I had as far as updates for now on the sewer system. I'm happy to take any questions any of you might have.
Go ahead, Matt.
Quickly on that point, Corey, when you send the letter to people, do you need that form with it so that they see, not that it's hard, but they see the form that they would have to fill out for abandonment for the people who are opting in right now? Or are they going to be able to bypass that part of the process?
No, I don't think they can bypass it. I think I think it would be, like I said, about 2 years from now when they go to actually apply to connect to our municipal system. I think at that point, we would just inform them, okay, when you apply to connect to our system, you also need to apply to abandon your septic system.
I see. So people who don't opt out still 2 years from now apply.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And is there an opt-out application as well?
Yes, there is. And that was at the beginning of that document I was sharing there.
I guess for that point, I didn't look at it clearly. You'll send it out, but I think making that distinction really clear right there would be helpful to people. Just so they see, oh, if I'm not opting out, here's the rest of my roadmap.
Right. Yep. That's a good point. Yeah, and like I said, on April 27th, we'll be having a public forum with everyone who wants to attend, and I'll make sure to cover those points there as well.
Make sure you've consulted with the town council, ASAP,
Yep.
and others before that meeting.
Yeah.
Because it won't take long for this to the conflict with certain aspects of Title V to become known, as it were.
Yep.
So when they submit the application to opt out and we see a copy of their current septic plan, the as-built, and we say when this fails in 20 years, when the groundwater rises because of global warming, and there's no place to put a new system, what happens then? They can't opt out?
They'd have to, I mean, but the way the legislation's written, they would have to come to the Board of Water Commissioners and then town meeting to connect. And they would have a compelling case to be made, but it would take time to do that. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
like,
not in public health interest. That's
I agree.
You got to do what you can to get this opt out repealed.
Yeah.
It's no good.
Yep.
or modified in some ways.
Right.
I mean, let's not throw everything out. I mean, it's heading in the right
There's
direction.
no reason for it, except financials. I mean, that's it. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Corey.
Sure, no problem.
I had a quick question. Sorry, just thinking of flow. Obviously, the act is the act. It is what it is at the moment. So opt out by the May date, basically next month. And then at some point in the future, apply to connect. And it's at the discretion of the water commissioners to decide whether someone can connect or not at that point. But you're already past the opt-out point. So I guess I'm just trying to read it going. I'm thinking worst case scenario or process piece of I have to connect now because I did not opt out when I had the opportunity 2 years ago. Now I've applied to connect, and there doesn't appear to be a must grant language in the act. It's up to the water commissioners to approve or not at their, at the pleasure of the board, at the pleasure of the commission. That I guess I'm just trying to think of any position that may put an individual homeowner into that. If for whatever reason, I can't imagine a reason why the commissioners would say, no, we don't like your plan, we're not approving it.
Right.
But now there again, that piece of I have to connect unless I permanently opt out. It's now 2 years later. I waited to connect and my application has been denied. What is the fallback position? What is the safety net for that person who, for whatever reason, can't now connect when it's time to connect, but they no longer can opt out because the language was pretty clear that you couldn't opt out anymore? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. Yeah. Again, that's a piece of the legislation that's a little bit.
It is what it is, but I'm trying to anticipate some questions that could come up both now and 2 years from now when somebody go, yeah, no, you need an easement across somebody else's property to connect because the turn of the road, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And now that piece of that's an anticipative, you can see ahead and see that potentially occurring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how do we address that? It's too late to really address it in the act as it is, but is there a way of, from a regulatory or an operational piece?
Yeah.
Even at the commissioner level, saying it's a will grant, unless you have a really compelling reason not to, as opposed to at the will of the board kind of piece. I can't imagine they ever say no, but I just want to make sure that we have that safety net as much as we can for public health, as well as for the residents who may fall into that one out of those 100 people who, here we are with the problem.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. Again, like you said, I can't imagine a scenario where that would happen, but the way the legislation's written, it could happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the example I could think of, Dan, right there is either I sell the house to somebody else who then wants to make their own decision, or I just passively don't opt out, but never apply to opt in. Right? Is there an enforcement somewhere in the legislation or in our powers to say you never opted out, you've never gone down the opt-out road, you must connect?
Yeah, the way the language is written is if you do not submit that opt-out form by May 31st, you are connecting, but you have no choice after that.
All right, but you see what I say? Like,
Yeah.
fine, that I won't apply, and
You can't make me. You can't.
it's a
make
gray
me-
area. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can't come to my
Okay, so,
house and
good luck,
make me
Corey.
sign a form.
Yeah, I suppose we could just waive the application requirement in that case and just connect them up anyways. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Corey, are you talking to us about the plumbing code issue on the bathroom too? The 725?
Yes, actually, I have CDM Smith here with me, Kara Johnston. She was going to discuss that if you.
Okay. Yeah, let's
letting her share her screen.
Dave, can you please promote Kara and let her share her screen?
On the way.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing well.
All right, I can share my screen. Thank you for having us tonight. We are here tonight to discuss the new wastewater treatment facility that's going to be located at 242 King Street, and the new facility request for a gender-neutral restroom. So just to point out where we are. Can everyone see my screen?
We lost your map.
Well, actually, you're running pretty fast across. I hope it's somewhere close by.
Yeah, we just see your background image on your desktop right now, Kara. There we go.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so just to orient everyone, the facility is to be located at 242 King Street. That's now owned by the Littleton Water Department. I can pull up the form that was submitted to the State Plumbing Board. So the application requires that the applicant submit written documentation to the local Board of Health petitioning for the variance request. So just to show you the actual facility itself, to orient you, on the left of the sheet here is King Street. Route 495 is up at the top of the page here. The proposal, as Corey's mentioned, is almost at the 90% stage, and we're currently going through the different permitting stages. So for example, the sheet here is the sheet that we discussed with the Conservation Commission last night. So what we're proposing is a new access drive. There'll be tankage supporting the facility in one building. And here is the building itself. We're calling it the membrane process building. The main treatment system is what's called a membrane bioreactor, MBR treatment system. So much of the equipment will be housed here. The facility will not be manned 24/7. The Littleton Water Department, or Water and Sewer Department as it would be now, would be coming in to perform maintenance at regular periods. But again, it wouldn't be a 24/7. So the proposed restroom does include a gender neutral restroom. It does include the shower, sink, lavatory, etc. So again, this is what was submitted to the State Plumbing Board for the variance request, and we're here tonight to petition to the Board of Health for their support as well.
Thank you. Yes, I'll go ahead and read Jim's comments. If the number of staff of the facility is going to be small, I don't see an issue with a single bathroom as requested. Any comments from board members? Questions, concerns? All right. Well, I don't know if we need to make a motion or this is just a discussion, or how do you let's see here? Oh, I guess it is a public hearing, so we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we grant. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dan. Question: Are the current we're varying from something? So the current recommendation is is 2 bathrooms, or for this kind of facility, 1 male, 1 female? And in that normal scenario, are they both showers? Because I heard you mention shower.
Yeah, the shower is triggered because it is a wastewater treatment facility. So the shower requirement, you want to have a shower at a wastewater treatment facility. The actual code itself states that separate toilet facilities shall be provided for each sex and shall be plainly so designated male and female. But again, this gender neutral restroom, it's the same that we've seen across facilities of this size. We visited a couple of plants with Corey and his staff, and the one restroom is what's been provided at similar size facilities. So this is kind of the standard. So it's a variance from the state plumbing code.
Yep.
Yeah, I can add to that. All of our other treatment facilities have one gender neutral restroom as well. So we have 3 other facilities like that. That's pretty standard for water and wastewater treatment plants. Just because you have one person going there for an hour a day, typically. There's never multiple people there on, rare occasion.
Thank you. Dan, you were saying something.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department a waiver of variance or waiver of requirements to allow a single gender neutral bathroom for their new facility at
242.
242 King Street. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Selden, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Corey.
All right, thank you all very much.
Corey,
Appreciate
let
it.
us know if we can help with the repeal of that opt-out clause.
I will. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right, we're running a little late, but we have a 7:30 public hearing for a variance request for 180 Great Road. Dave, can you please promote? Is it? I don't see any engineer, but is it Colby Field? Yeah, there he goes. Yep, hand raised.
Oh man.
Hi, Colby. How are you?
Good. Sorry about that. That's not usually a computer guy.
That's all right. Do you have a copy of the plan to share by any chance?
I should have had one that was sent out by Janet on Friday.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
I don't have anything in front of me on this computer.
I have it here. Let me see if I can get it up. Dave, I'm going to share my screen. Just this one of these days. All right. Can everyone see the plan?
Yep.
Okay. So Colby, go ahead and tell us what's going on.
That looks like the original plan, actually, with a pump chamber on it. I don't know if you should have an updated copy of the plan that was shared. So that actually is good to see this. So the system that's there shows a pump and a pretty big field, requiring quite a bit of sand import and a lot of material to be moved around. We had a redesigned system. I have some dimensions right here for the new system that but just brings it down to be a little bit smaller and reduces the size of the field and the need for material to be imported, and also gets rid of the pump chamber.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and read Jim's comments. 180 Great Road. The applicant has redesigned the sewage disposal system for this site to use the Presby system for the leaching area instead of the conventional pipe and stone leaching area, and to request a reduction in the groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet. The pipe and stone leaching area was designed to meet a 4 feet offset in Title V. The proposed leaching area is a replacement upgrade of the existing failed sewage disposal system. The applicant also needs a local upgrade approval for the use of an estimated perk rate sieve analysis, which was conducted instead of conducting a perk since the soil was too wet to perk. I don't have an issue with the request for the local upgrade approval for the sieve analysis. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Matt.
I guess we don't know if Jim's comments are based upon the drawings that we got or some new plan that we cannot see.
They're based upon a new plan we haven't seen from Janet, just because of I think the turnover.
Yeah.
Do we
There's
know
a
that for sure?
disconnect.
Because the date on the plan, the one we got was April 8th. So have you redesigned the plans in the last 4.5 days?
No, but the plan that I just saw that was on the screen showed a pump chamber, and that's
This is, yeah, it says April 20, 2020.
yeah. So that's. I mean, you guys have a plan that says April 8th on it somewhere.
No,
I haven't seen
meant
that.
we,
No.
as members of the board, we received the plan that you saw, which appears to be an old plan on April 8th. So I would say this is what was submitted to the Board of Health with your application, which appears to be an old plan. So my question again would be, is this plan that's presented, has it actually been presented, and is the notes from our health agent based on the plan that has been submitted or a different one?
So the notes from the health agent are from the plan that I had printed, which is the accurate plan that I actually hand delivered to the board myself. So the discrepancy is from what I submitted, from what you received from the position that's no longer filled at the town hall. There was a mix up on their end. You don't believe me, Dan?
Only if I have the email open at the moment, and it is from you to Janet, dated April 8th, 2022. And
Yep.
the plan that we saw up was attached to the email that you sent. So I'm not denying there's another plan in existence, but it appears that the plan attached to the email you sent on April 8th to Janet is the one that we just saw, which appears to be the old plan.
Okay.
Colby, do you have a copy of the new plan on your computer there?
I have it on my phone, actually. Maybe I can email it to you right now and you pull it up. Is that a possibility?
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
You have to mail it directly to Kevin, right?
Yeah, I could email it directly to him right now, actually. Yeah. So.
All right, let me know when it's sent.
I don't have your I don't think I have your email.
Baker.littletonboh@gmail.
Baker.littletonboh@gmail.com.
Yes.
The first page should have just sent. Any luck yet?
No, not yet.
I appreciate the working with me here.
Yeah, sometimes that Board of Health email takes a little bit to come through because it's a it's like an alias. Yeah, because we didn't have a packet this week, right? So it would have been in there too.
Let me just, I can forward the whole email with all the stamps. Just have your email one more time if you don't mind.
Sure, it's Baker dot Littleton BOH at gmail.com. So I'm going to keep an eye on my inbox and wait for that to come in. I think in the best interest of time, if you're okay with sticking around for a little bit, we're going to and then come right back to you as soon as I get it and I can open
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So, Dave, we are going to go to our discussion for 9 Drover quickly, I think, and then we'll call Colby back up. Matt Field, are you here? All right. Dave, can you please promote Matt?
Kevin, can you hear me?
I can, yeah, hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for seeing us. So we came back with your request to change the room under 70 square feet in the lower level of Drover Lane. And Mr. Griffey is asking still for a deed restriction, which the homeowner would rather not have. And as you would requested, a room under 70 square feet, as you know, is not a habitable space.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just not a bedroom.
No,
It's not a room. Yeah.
it's not a room.
Yeah.
A closet, right?
Yeah.
No closet, no carpet. It's a rubberized floor.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read Jim's comments real quick, and then we can open it up for the board. Do you have a plan to share, an updated plan? Because I don't believe we saw one.
Yes, it was uploaded and given to Mr. Griffey through Janet. I would suspect it's probably the same thing.
Yeah, we didn't see it.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. No.
So here are Jim's comments. The plans for finishing the basement when initially presented to the board in December would have created 3 rooms in the basement. The upper floors have a total of 8 rooms, including 4 bedrooms. The sewage disposal system was designed to accommodate 4 bedrooms, and by the bedroom definition in Title V would allow for 9 rooms total, including 4 bedrooms in the house. The board was not in favor of the addition of 3 rooms and suggested the applicant reduce the number of rooms by combining rooms or making them too small to be considered rooms, i.e. the proposed gym. The most recent plan I've seen from the applicant would have 2 rooms added in the basement and the gym reduced in size so it wouldn't meet the definition of a bedroom. The proposed basement work would create a house which has 10 rooms, which would require, according to Title V, a 5-bedroom sewage disposal system. If the applicant would like to finish the basement as proposed, they would need to record a restriction on the deed limiting the house to 4 bedrooms. Matt, as I recall, we talked about this and we said if there's going to be 10 rooms, it's got to have a deed restriction. I can go back and look at the meeting and.
Yeah, we watched it. We never discussed the deed restriction. Is that correct? That is
right.
correct.
Yeah.
I went back and watched it as well, Kevin.
Because that's what we typically do. If it's over the 1 room that's already over.
Yep.
So if it's 2 rooms over, which this would be, the board requires a deed restriction. And if we said that you didn't need one, it would be going against all the things we've done over the past at least 6 years that I've been here.
Yep. We'll do, I'm here with the homeowner, so
Yeah.
if the board is requiring a deed restriction, Sassy, you're acceptable with it? Is that,
Yeah, I don't want to, but if that's what we talked. If we make
you
this
want
plan,
to do the.
It's not going to hurt you. Everybody's got them. It's just a thing on your deed, you know?
I'm here requesting this on behalf of the homeowner, and if you're requiring a deed restriction, I certainly, you know I know the laws, I'm an inspector, and if that's what you're requesting, you have to agree to it, Sassy, and then we move forward.
from our last meeting, what I understand was that if the gym room is less than 70 square foot, then we don't need a deed restriction, and that is why
That's not what Kevin's, that's not what we're saying.
right?
Let me answer this, Kevin.
I don't have a plan in front of me too. I just like to
I'll answer it for you. You have 4 rooms on the second floor,
Yes,
4 rooms on the first floor.
Yeah.
You have 2 rooms in the basement, not including the gym.
Right.
That is 10 rooms. Title V on a 4-bedroom septic allows 9 rooms. If you want to have the way you want to have it, you are going to have to do a deed restriction and have the Board of Health approve this.
so you are saying that I cannot make any changes on that house without a deed restriction?
That's exactly what they're saying.
You can add 1 room in the basement without a deed restriction, not 2.
And we are saying if a room is less than 70 square foot, we are not calling it as a room, right?
Correct.
In that case, it would still be 10. So why do we need a deed?
Because you're only allowed 9 under Title V.
We just said it's 10.
I guess the part that maybe I'm not quite sure the applicant understands, but this is designed so that if and when you sell the home, it's going to be in the deed during the sale so that the buyer understands very clearly that you can only have 4 bedrooms there.
Right.
Period. That's what it's designed to do. We're not questioning how you use the additional room under your proposed plan. The issue here is that the deed restriction says that before the sale could be consummated, when you sell or try to sell, that it'll be very clearly marked on your deed that this can only be a 4-bedroom house.
Correct. I understand the rules totally.
Okay.
Email Baker. Go ahead.
Say that again. I'm sorry. You broke up.
Email, Kevin?
My email?
Yeah, well, right.
Send the plan, baker.littletonboh@gmail.
Gmail.
Littleton, BOH
Gmail?
@gmail.
Okay. Beautiful. We're sending that over to you. I want to thank you for your time. I understand
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, it's confusing.
No, I got it, but I'm here on behalf of the homeowner and I explained the rules. And if he wants to do this, he'll have to do a deed restriction.
I just sent it.
All right.
Will you approve this tonight with a deed restriction, Kevin?
Well, let's see if there are any comments or questions from board members.
Okay.
Comments or questions from board members?
I think once we get the plan and we can, if the new plan is consistent with what's being presented, I'm okay. I'm sure other people have different points.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the plan is consistent and we're looking at 2 rooms in the basement plus a sub 70 square foot
That's right.
closet.
The plan shows the 2 rooms in the lower level and the gym area is 9 feet 11 inches by 7 feet.
11 inches. That's good.
I mean,
You use a thick drywall on that?
Yeah,
Actually, it's much smaller than that. It would be 8 by 8, I guess.
Oh, listen, you could put a stationary recumbent bike in there. Seriously.
All right, so you've got the plan to you, and
We'll look at the plan. I mean, I think, this email hasn't come through yet. I'm sure it will. I don't see an issue. I don't think any of the board members see an issue with this as long as the plan that's presented is what we're talking about.
yes, sir. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
You have anything else for them, Sassy?
No, unless we wasted 4 months. We would have finished the project by now had we gone with this deed restriction back in December.
Thank you for your time, board.
Have a good night.
Have a wonderful evening.
All right. So next we have a discussion with the Littleton Volunteer Corps, Alex McCurdy, to discuss the process for appointing volunteers. Any board member comments have do any board members have a comment or a question regarding this process? Any thoughts on how this board would like to see this process happen in the future? Go ahead, Dan.
So I read Ms. McCurdy's note and kind of the process piece. I completely understand the educational piece for the CERT team, that you have folks who have significant public health, and public safety experience, and you have other folks who are just incredibly community minded and will get up to speed relatively quickly along with as part of the team. I think certainly for my piece that if we are the appointing authority, more than maybe a name would be nice. That experience and those kind of pieces are nice and can be helpful, but I agree with Mr. McCurdy's piece that nice but probably not critical. However, basic demographics, name, the name, address, having it very clearly spelled out that they've been quarried and storied and that they are cleared. Just formalizing a little bit more than, nope, we checked them out. Please appoint this person. We checked them out. They're okay. Something slightly more formal than that, whether it's, a 4-line piece of, we've done this and it's clear. We've done this and it's clear. It's been approved by, the emergency management director. It's been approved by the director of CERT. That piece of just, a little bit more
Something
clear, so that we don't appoint somebody and then find out that, oh, their quarry story was never done.
Yeah,
Or
the
there was an
background
issue-
check didn't. Yeah.
There was an issue on it that somebody went, that's probably okay, but the appointing authority.
That does not happen.
Mr. McCurdy,
I'm not saying-
we'll get to you in a minute.
As to that piece of course, I would, of course, I trusted Chief Budzinski. Of course, I trust, Mr. McCurdy. The piece of, though, it's just clarifying the process and making sure that, nope, we know we've checked these boxes before we appoint someone. Not saying that they would ever be anything, but just make sure that we're all on the same page. It's all above board. It's if the position requires an appointment by elected body, that we have at least see that same criteria that, the hiring manager, for lack of a better phrase, would see as part of that process. I don't think that's necessarily unreasonable. We don't need to see their whole CV, but just those basics that we know they've been cleared officially. We, who they are, where they live, that their quarry stories are clear, and that, the emergency management director and the CERT director are on board. That seems pretty simple, straightforward, basic, without sharing a ton of information. It is a public appointment and before a public board. I think that's not much more information than would be provided simply as a member of the community stepping in front of the board. Give us your name, give us your address. Okay, please proceed with your comments. It's not much more information than that. So that doesn't seem unreasonable.
Do any other board members have anything to add?
Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
If not, I don't have a lot of background in this particular process, but it does strike me as just odd that what am I appointing somebody for? And if we don't have any criteria for appointment, then it sounds just like a rubber stamp, which is fine if that's how it's kind of designed. But I wouldn't want to attach my name to somebody saying, yes, I as a member of a public board appointed this person but don't actually know anything about them. At the very least, like Dan was alluding, some sort of formal documentation that these boxes have all been appropriately checked. And frankly, we should then have some say in what those requirements are, so that there's that guarantee that at least our appointment criteria are being met.
Mike, do you have anything?
I think Dan's comment pretty well covered it. I mean, this has been going on for a while. I mean, there are no secrets here. It was asked for at the beginning several weeks ago. It still remains in place. Dan did a great job of summarizing basic stuff, and I don't think there's any problem to this at all. And as a public, I'll just echo what Matt just said, as a public, since its appointment apparently to some extent depend on the Board of Health, I don't see any problem. It's consistent with the open meeting rules and also with the regulations covering how a public board like this must behave. And the past is, not relevant. It's where we are today, which is transparency, and and basically there's no radar system operating.
Dave, could you also please promote the interim fire chief? We haven't met. Mr. McCurdy, do you think it'd be possible to provide that basic information to the board prior to us voting to appoint someone to your volunteer corps?
Well, I would like to, I'm assuming you can hear me all right. So I'm in the room with the chief, by the way. If you hear some echo, we're both in the same room. So the process has been the same since we reorganized the organization in 2015. One of the reasons the organization was changed the way it was is the original function of the Board of Health was to oversee an MRC that no longer exists. The MRC duties are handled by the region, statewide, and our requirements mirror theirs. And so if I may, just review the process a little bit. The town is very clear that a volunteer cannot volunteer without a query check. And we do not accept anyone that has not done a query check. And we do one every 2 years. We just got done doing queries on everyone. I think what we have to be careful of here is these are a group of volunteers that do not report to the board. They report to me, and I report to the emergency management director. And of course, I would report to you as well. And our process is pretty clear on what we want them to do. And if we send you a name, and I'm assuming you got the list we sent you today, do you have that? Okay, we tried to get it over there somehow, but we have an entire list of the members who currently exist, including their addresses and basic contact information. And this is what we've been using since 2015, when this understanding is reached between the emergency management director and the Board of Health. So I'm very concerned that we're going to be asking for things that, number one, aren't really necessary, and number two, might discourage volunteers. And when you first asked this question, it sounded like there was going to be a public hearing and all of those things. And the kind of people that volunteer for a group like this are not interested in that kind of public sort of thing. They want to quietly go serve other people. And I am supposed to be their shield for that. And so I would respectfully request that the board allow the policy to continue. The list that we sent you today has every member's name. All would have been appointed with the exception of one, which is the one that started this. And they all are also appointed congruently by the emergency management director. And that's one of the reasons we need to keep it a simple process, because now we have 2 appointments.
In my eyes, it's a very simple process. The board was asking for the, potentially like the address of the person and maybe their qualifications and some sort of, a proof of a quarry is a great idea.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Interim Chief Howard, we through our executive assistant here at the fire department, we have added all the addresses for the board. We have added when the quarries were done,
Okay.
how often the quarries are done, and what has been done here, even prior to my arrival by the former fire chief, by Scott, is that the fire department's policies, when they look at a call member on the department and stuff, are the same policies that Scott was using as the emergency management director. But through Chief Alex's work as the director for the LVC and our executive assistant, we've now been able to expand that list and make that list more encompassing of things that would help you as a board to know exactly who these people are.
That's exactly what I think we were looking for.
And we did that. We did that, and we tried all day today. And the building inspector offered through the executive assistant to try to get the information to you. Alex had been sending the information since early this morning, but we weren't having any success with getting a reply about the information getting there.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's
With Janine.
Yeah, exactly, Janet. Yeah.
But we have that information for you. It's a 2-page list. The only people that are on it are people that you've been in, that you have knowledge about from before. And, I want them to be transparent, and they've agreed to that. Mm-hmm. Just quickly to wrap things up, to share with you, the fear was that some of the volunteers were nervous about having to maybe speak or go in front of a board. And I know all of us can appreciate how that can sometimes be difficult for people.
Yeah, no, we want this to be a very simple process. I mean, to be very candid, I'm of the mindset of that, if the fire chief and the emergency management director give them the green light, then the Board of Health has the blessing. Or you have the Board of Health's blessing. But go ahead, Matt. I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I would just say, I almost totally agree with you. I would say as long as we help set the criteria for appointment, which might be as simple as Alex has a quarry done and you guys record the address and the phone number, that's fine. I just want to know when I say I vote for somebody's appointment, I want the validation that the checklist that we all agreed upon has been completely done. I agree. I don't want a public hearing about them. I don't want an interview necessarily. I just want to know for sure that the steps that we expected to be done for the appointment have been done, and we all agree on those steps. That's it.
Matt and the other board members, that can be done easily, and we can take any input that you have. The director, Chief Alex, has a credentialing. We actually have an SOG that we call policy and procedure, where there is a credentialing document right now that's already in place. We could get that to you. You could maybe make some additions if you feel. But I think when you look at this and you look at the checklist that's attached, you'll see it's a pretty significant document.
That sounds great.
That's perfect.
I doubt I want to change it. Yeah. That way, when you send somebody, you say, we've done the checklist, check. Will you appoint them? I will then know and trust what has been back. I feel totally comfortable with it.
So we'll get you a copy of the operating guideline that this is, that shows this. And I think that'll answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's great. We're not looking to micromanage a process. We just want to make sure the process is we can feel comfortable voting on.
And Mr. Chairman, how do you want Alex and I to get this stuff to you? Because we know that the office, How would you like it sent to you?
You know, I have Alex's email. I'll send him my email address so he can
Perfect.
send it to me, and then I'll somehow circulate it to the board without violating open
And
meeting.
Matt, just to go back, just so you can see, this is the second page. It's 2 pages.
Yeah, that's
There's
perfect.
a lot of information here.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
You
everybody.
guys have a good
I,
night.
I trusted
Have a
you
good
were
night.
doing a good job. It's just like I said, if I have to vote on the appointment, I just want to see exactly what was done.
We understand that.
Can we get you to vote on that one member that all this discussion started with?
If you send us the form tomorrow,
She's gone through the same process as everybody else.
thank you very much.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Good night. I did finally get the email.
So what do I do now?
Dave, can we have Colby back up?
He's still promoted. He just needs to turn his video on.
Got it. All right, so I have this attachment. I'm going to
Sorry about that.
I'm going to forward this email to all the board members. Just don't reply all. And let me download this and present it. All right, so this is the new system. Can you all see this?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So no pump chamber.
Yep.
And so you're really only here for a variance on the sieve analysis?
I think so. I honestly don't really know why.
It's got to be the sieve. That's the only,
Yeah.
You're not
It
10.
also had a 2-foot offset,
Oh yeah.
No,
40.
the offset.
groundwater
Yeah.
offset.
Right. How high was the groundwater?
I think it was at 22 inches is the modeling, right?
I can't read.
Yeah, I think depth at 22, right? 24, 32.
Depth, color, texture. Refusal. Oh, seepage at 48, standing water at 95. No refusal. Seepage at 44. Standing water. What do they call this? Seepage, the high water?
Well, I think the high water is the what they call the modeling. It's the depth of 22, 24, and 32 on each test hole. You can see them on the depth
Yeah, got it.
column.
22, 24, 32. Okay. And what did the sieve come back as?
I believe it was 30 minutes. But I
mean, as long as it was over
yeah,
two.
I mean, I think in Jim's comment, he said that he has no problem with the sieve. It was just the offset is what he was.
As long as the sieve didn't come back faster than 2 minutes an inch, because if it's faster than 2 minutes an inch, then we can't give the 2 foot. We do the 3.
Yeah, it's not. It's see if I can look at it on my side. It's hard for me to see that sideways.
Yeah, I know. I can't do. Oh, wait a minute. Look at this
I was
function.
gonna say, Kevin, you should have a rotate button there.
Yeah, look at that. No, I'm gonna pay for it, Dan. Sieve analysis at 70. CI damp. Sieve analysis at 70 inches. That's all it says. Yeah, I mean, unless you can tell us what the actual, I mean, that's my question is, you know, what the sieve come back at? But if it's 30, if it's what you say, which I believe you, but we should verify that with Jim.
Yeah.
This seems like we just have a motion to approve, given the confirmation of the sieve analysis number.
Okay, let me just see if I can read that a little bit better. This is just for my house. I'm not. I didn't design this or any of that stuff, and I wasn't even part of the testing. But let me see if I can soil evaluation. Depth, color, features.
Yeah, there's a letter from Marky and Ruben here, but it doesn't call out what the actual sieve was. But I'm sure if it was under 2 minutes an inch, that Jim would say he
If
did.
it was under 2 minutes an inch, you wouldn't have done a sieve analysis, like in a normal setting, I believe. Let me just call the engineer quickly. I think I can reach him via phone.
Class 2, here it is. Sorry, it's really hard sideways. Class 2 soil, 30 minutes per inch.
Yeah, there it is. Perfect.
Yeah, that was my concern, as long as it wasn't too fast. The 2 foot.
I knew that it was somewhere. I don't have the plan in front of me, and other than this, but so thank you.
So the 2 foot should be fine. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion in regard to the application for a variance and redesign for 180 Great Road. Granting the local upgrade approval for the using the estimated perk rate as described in the plan accompanying 180 Great Road application.
And 2 foot groundwater offset.
Yeah, 2 variances, the sieve analysis and the 2 foot groundwater offset.
Correct.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote. Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Kevin Baker votes yes. Thanks, Colby. Sorry for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish I was a little bit better with the technology here. This could have been a little bit quicker.
That's all right.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
So next we have a discussion that's been continued regarding residential trash haulers. I'm awaiting a document from Alex, the town council. I asked her to send over, I sent her the Harvard regs that we'd all sort of talked about and thought were pretty good. Asked her to include some language regarding composting, and also, regarding, where they're bringing it, and what happens if they fail to provide service. So I'm eagerly awaiting a fresh copy of that. And once we have that, I'll circulate it to everyone. And hopefully we can, let's just post a public hearing for our next meeting and have that in our packet so folks can review it and we can hopefully put that to bed and move on. Comments?
I had recommended Kevin last time, should we try to get it to the known haulers for around first, so that potentially, I don't know if it'll be back in time for that meeting, because if they have some constructive feedback that we would want to incorporate before the public hearing.
We could do that. I don't know if, given the lack of internal hours that are being put in on our administrative side of things right now, I just don't know how quickly that all happens. And, I hate to just delay getting something on the books because I feel like, we're dragging our feet to make something perfect that, we can always go back and edit and amend as it faces reality in the day-to-day. But Mike, do you have something?
Yeah, just a quick, I suggest that we go as quickly as we can to a hearing and definitely get input simultaneously in the same room, invite haulers and the public. I think to provide a copy ahead of time to the haulers gives the idea that the haulers is basically having some sort of non-public impact on the rules.
Well, they'll be part of the public comment section.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's how we'll do it then, Matt.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll have them give comment publicly and, does that work for everybody? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Discussion continued. ID decision support tool. Matt, give us an update. You're muted. You're still muted. Yep. There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, here is our current tool. Made a couple changes that we discussed last time and has some updated data. We'll see about getting it posted on the web. That's my next mission. I added this objective line that we can, I think, come out of a discussion at a meeting. If we say we feel it should be green, yellow, or red for a certain reason, where we can then kind of jot the reason down. We have our ICU bed access. We have our new CDC community level, which Katrina just showed was yellow. We have our up-to-date vaccinations. That's still an ongoing work to see if we can get a little more robust and streamlined data production there. Going to add the case rate trend graphically. We are still getting our public school prevalence data, work to be done on the town services side, and the community wastewater. Based upon our analysis that I did last week on the wastewater data, these are some at least starting numbers for us to discuss. I'm wondering whether the lower threshold should be 100 samples, but I think this is a reasonable place to start. And clearly, what we don't have on this tool right now are trends, but I think that should be a part of the conversation that we have. So to Mike's point earlier, I think what I would recommend what we do is we start making sure we're reviewing this tool at the bare minimum at meetings and use it as a discussion point to say, here's the data factually. Now let's have a brief conversation about how good we feel about these greens and yellows and reds. And that should then drive some action. I think there's a reason it's not like a score. We don't just add something up because it shouldn't be driving what we do. It should be driving our discussion is what I would say. And so I think while it looks pretty green, as Katrina also mentioned, a lot of numbers are just going either steadily or in the wrong direction, not in a favorable direction, which I think should then drive us to some sort of stage of discussion to say, we should be making either a recommendation or a mandate or some requirement at the community level. I would propose that it's pretty hard to jump straight from like 0 to mandate. Right now, our only recommendation is really that people wear a mask when possible or when they feel like they can, and make sure their vaccinations are up to date. I would propose and recommend that as a group, we have a discussion about it and then say, can we come out as a board and have something more firm, knowing that the numbers are going in the wrong direction? We're concerned about our community. Should we more strongly recommend at least mask wearing at this point? And then inquire as to, can we improve our vaccination rate? And are our community members who are over the age of 50 who can get a booster, do they have the access that they need to do so? I would then just hope that once we have this on the web, our recommendations should be side by side with the data. And that's what I would hope to achieve.
And are you interested in giving more weight to any criteria here?
I think it would be too early to make a jump like that. I would say because we're in a low period, that automatically means that our leading indicators should be weighted more strongly, but I feel like that should be mostly discussion driven. Obviously, we should not be looking significantly at our ICU bed access right now. That shouldn't be weighted very strongly because we don't expect that number to be high. That's a real lagging indicator. So that's kind of why I don't really want to put a whole lot of weighting to it, because I think it's going to be scenario driven as to what's going on at the time. I feel like conversationally it should be, well, although it's green a lot of the places, we are worried mostly about that wastewater data this week, for example.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think we need to have this discussion about, what, and we don't necessarily have to, I think this is the point that Mike brought up earlier. We don't necessarily need to say when we implement or require or recommend certain different mitigations, but what are these mitigations? And, and then we have the discussions at what point. But, does it make sense to put the mitigations out there on the website right off the bat, just because, yeah. So, what about, so limiting indoor gatherings, is there a max capacity, is there indoor gatherings with masks, no outdoor gatherings? Like how crazy is it going to get? Are there masks required in outdoor gatherings? Are mask wearing in all town buildings and schools? Or is it a mask wearing in all indoor public spaces? I think there are different levels of mitigation that we can put in place if and when needed. And yeah, I think we should.
So I agree. And I would say these are kind of, I was trying to capture the levers, those mitigation actions that we can take, but there's not a roadmap for that because it should be heavily dependent upon the agent that we're looking at. We know that BA2 looks to be probably more transmissible than anything else we've seen so far. So that might lead us to try to lean towards something where it's leaning more on mask mandates or those kind of gathering restrictions. I don't know. Today, do we know enough about it? Probably not. I wouldn't say that we're at the point of any sort of mitigation requirement, but I think we're absolutely at the point of a mitigation recommendation. I think the community should hear a clear message, in my opinion, saying the Board of Health is looking at this data regularly. Right now, we're looking at it, and we're getting concerned about the direction some of these numbers are going, especially the wastewater information. Based upon that, we would strongly recommend that our community members wear masks as much as possible in public places.
Yeah, practice social distancing and, limit your exposure indoors to people that, to more than your family members, kind of a thing. Yeah. Mike, go ahead.
First of all, a trivial matter. I don't think it's a great idea. This is just a little, shall we say, entry comment, and that is that I don't think we should call it subjective. At the top, if you could go to the top up there, level of concern, that shouldn't be a subjective evaluation. It's basically to just use the word evaluation or just make it the truth, and that is board evaluation of concerning agents. Okay. For example, you may not be aware of it, but the B2 guy has already given birth to 2 sisters, which are now, shall we say, having their fun in New York. And there's reason to believe it's already here. And the characteristic, there's no evidence they're any more lethal or dangerous than the brother, the favorite B2. But they are definitely more contagious than the predecessors. So it looks as if currently what we're dealing with is a family of very contagious agent, number one. Number two, if you look at our data of the past, in Littleton, as well as other towns around us, the primary place where we get the cluster effect, where the contagiousness rears its head, is in what we'll call family and neighborhood settings. So it's very much as if there's someone comes in from point X and basically shall we say, transmits to a whole bunch of people in the house. Maybe they're visitors, maybe they're not. And also in the neighborhood, including carpooling or whatever. So that's been the characteristic of Littleton for quite a while, regardless of which strain, which variant has been dancing around. So I think Matt's got a very good idea that probably now is a very good time. And one other little notation that's more having to do with text is basically don't call it's not really Boston wastewater that we're looking at. That wastewater comes from, if you look at the map, it comes from quite numerous both north and south towns that use the Quabbin Reservoir as their source, right, Matt?
Yeah.
So basically, I would call the MWR data, RA data.
That's my
Okay.
note on the site. Good catch, though. That was when we said we won't get Littleton. Gone.
Okay, so real quick, there will be, not for years will there be Littleton data, and I can get that if we have time at the end, because if you saw my memo, that's a dead end for us at the moment. We can talk about that later. So the real issue we face here is what I think Matt put his finger on, and that is the recommendation should be that 50 and older, and if you haven't had, you should be getting your booster shot. If your last booster was 6 months or more prior to this date, you should seriously consider getting one, and they're readily accessible at CVS and other places. There's plenty of vaccine around at the moment. And the other issue is that there are certain places where we may, shall we say, that managers or owners of grocery stores and drugstores should seriously considering putting a mask requirement on their staff as well as their customers as a further addition to precaution. But I'm not suggesting for a moment that we should put down at this point mandates. So what I'm getting at is if we're dealing with contagiousness and our objective is to reduce, if we have a very contagious agent and we don't want it to spread, or we'd like to limit the spreading, you're either going to get vaccinated and get sick, but not as sick as you might think or want to get. And number two, the only other thing you can do is use the only thing that really prevents transmission is going to be this physical, not getting sick, or using a mask that's suitable for preventing the virus from being spread. And as Katrina pointed out, that's KN and K95s, which are not the most popular accoutrements at the moment. But those are it ends with, here's what we recommend, and our objective is to reduce spread, highly contagious agent. What can we do to curtail and reduce the spread? And right now
we're doing a little bit of build the airplane as we fly, which is great. So process wise, I'm happy to also kind of document a recommended flow chart, steps that we as the board can go through. And one of them, like you point out, Mike, was, this level of concern. I didn't want to be arbitrarily choosing that color. I think that's something that early in a conversation we should, as a board, say, okay, are we green, yellow, or red here?
If wastewater is yellow, our concern is yellow.
Right?
That's my.
And then building upon that, I think my then procedural question would be, this tool is supposed to help us as a board come out with a message, but that doesn't guarantee that all 5 of us are going to agree on a message. So I don't know if we want to go so far as to say, well, maybe we have some boilerplate statements that we know we might use more often than others. So we could grab the mask recommendation statement.
I think we need to identify the levers.
Right.
And
like Mike was saying, is now when we say, hey, businesses, please strongly consider putting your own internal mandates in place for employees. But then it's also, what should our decision process be as a board itself to say, yes, we are agreeing that that's our official message of the week?
Well, let's say that, we go through all the data and we identify all the levers, and then a board member might say something like, I'd like to make a motion to recommend, given the level of COVID popping up in wastewater in the area, the board strongly recommends that, people 50 years and older, if you're not fully vaccinated, if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you're not fully up to date on your vaccinations and qualify for a booster, get your booster shot. We highly recommend wearing masks in indoor spaces, and highly recommend practicing social distancing and testing at home if you have symptoms. If you get mixed messages on your test, go get a PCR. I mean, we could say something like that.
Okay.
And someone could second it, and then we'll do a roll call vote.
That's kind of what I was getting at, is do we just want to make it a motion for us to have then our official statement? And that's fine. I just want to make sure we're on a similar page.
Yeah.
I just want to say that. So the phrase is strongly recommend or recommend?
I'd say recommend. Use strongly. That can be the next lever. Once one of these other things turns yellow, then we get strong.
I guess the default message over the past weeks has always been, at the state level and the CDC level, has been people are recommended to wear masks whenever possible.
Mm.
So I guess, how do we communicate that we think that we're actually in a worse place today than we were 2 weeks ago, even though it doesn't feel like it?
I think that really calling out that leading indicator that we have, which is the wastewater, and we know that because of the trajectory that mark is on, we're going to be feeling that in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And we know that's not, that's the truth.
Okay.
My other concern also is that even if the Board of Health makes a recommendation using the word strong, and it does beg the question of voluntary compliance and effectiveness in reaching our objective. So if our objective is to inform, I think we're on good ground. We're giving a best estimate we can. And I think when we make the recommendation, as I think the word here was levers, but you might say on the basis of this, the basis for this recommendation is our experience has been that when the MWR data reaches a certain upward trend, we know it will arrive here. It's contagious. Here's what we recommend for you to take a measure to reduce the opportunity for spread.
Yeah. New variants, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said for coming up with a statement in writing and having it sort of edited and, put together in a way that makes the most sense to put out for public consumption. And we can certainly work to put something like that together. I don't know if it happens right now, but it can certainly happen in, the coming days.
Well, we are coming up to a point where I guess it's Easter in Littleton, right? And that's when people will be going to houses of worship, gathering for dinners, correct?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So this might be an appropriate time to say, take precautions. And these are some of the recommended precautions in view of the clouds that are forming in the horizon.
So may I ask something of you, Mike? Could you put together 3 or 4 sentences that we can all just kick around to maybe tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, that we can get to the town administrator to post on the town Facebook page for the Board of Health's recommendation, because that's the second piece of this, is actually getting the information out. So I feel like that's the number one way we're going to get that accomplished. So
I would, except I'm getting on a plane
that's fine.
soon. Okay.
I can outline something.
I don't mean to pass the buck.
Everybody. Yeah.
I don't mean to pass the buck, but I want to pass the buck.
Yeah, you're right.
And the person I think who's got the combination of skills here is sort of a Dan Matt person.
Matt, can you
a hybrid? I'm not going to indicate which one is using electric and which one
nominate.
Matt, can you put MD after your name if you include that in the thing? Maybe.
They'll take his license away.
Yeah. So why don't I do this? Why don't I come up with 4 sentences, email it to everybody. Please give your comments, and then we'll get it sent out to town administrator tomorrow. But I think that what we need to do now is take a vote to do so with, some sort of motion to put out a recommendation upon approval by all board members.
So just to make sure we have the elements of recommending mask, distancing, vaccinations, right? Testing, and especially for vaccination for people who are 50 and older, who are at or near the end of their 6-month period of their last vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
Boosted.
If you're eligible.
There's 5 pieces, Matt, right?
Yeah.
Dan, 5? Okay.
And then we're going to add on the based upon
this data.
Right.
Here's what we know. It's
Okay.
going to affect us at this time, or it's already affecting us.
Yep.
Let's take these precautions so we can try and.
Yeah, you can even use the word multiple variants are out in the wild. So it's the brother and the 2 sisters that are out there.
Right.
Or the sister and the 2 brothers.
So I'll send that email out probably later tonight. If you guys can just get back to me by like noon tomorrow. So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Health issue a recommendation to the public, to the residents of Littleton, via town administrator and the town's Facebook page, given the new variants and new data that we're seeing, given approval of a majority of the board.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, Dan Kane,
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason,
yes.
and Mike Zeldin.
Myself, yes.
Evan Baker votes yes. All right, moving on. So I'll get that over to you guys. Thank you. And we'll keep on working on the ID decision support tool. I think it's important we have it on the agenda, and I think it's important that we keep talking through it. And
Oh yeah, I was going to mention, I feel like that should be just a standing 5-minute, maybe either right after Katrina speaks or something cohort.
Sounds good. Discussion regarding the potential regulation requiring treatment for sewage disposal systems within 100 feet of wetlands. I still think it's a good idea. I think that there are a lot of stakeholders in it that need to be a part of the conversation. I think it would be a good idea to hold a public hearing, maybe to get people involved, if the board has the appetite for that, and we should have a vote probably to have a public hearing. Maybe that's the way we do it. Comments, Dan?
So part of this was, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just gonna say, certainly if we have a public hearing, we should probably have a proposed set of regulations around that. Now, if the extent of the regulation is we were gonna require a septic management system within 100 feet, that may be the extent of
That's all
the
it is.
line item. That's it. So,
Regulation 34.
all right, then in that case, you know what, having a conversation, bringing it forward, as long as we can generate a rationale, which I think we've identified, you know, this came out of a case,
Mhm.
out of a variance request that presented concerns, but still fell outside of the regulation. So there's no opportunity to mitigate the concerns because it was
without a lawsuit.
regulation.
I was going to say, reading through some of the stuff that Jim sent over, that brought up the cost consideration and how do we build that in if we say, well, you can do it within 100 as long as you use these more advanced and probably more expensive solutions. So will it be sufficient that we just set the guidance at 100 and then as a board we understand that we always have to have this potential cost discussion?
I don't think we have any conversations regarding costs. I think we have conversations regarding the best application for groundwater and public health. In regards to anyone that's got a question about increased costs, there are many ways to engineer and put together a system. Technically, a Presby system is treatment. So instead of using, you could use the Presby instead of the geomat with a pump system or a treatment tank. The treatment tank's probably $3,500, like maybe $4,000, and installed. And if you didn't want to go that route, and the geomat's more expensive anyway. The only really thing you're getting out of the geomat is a lower profile. But if you go and put a Presby system in, like, yeah, maybe it's going to be 6 inches or a foot higher, but you wouldn't have to put treatment in. So if the aesthetic is what you're going for, then you're going to probably, then that would be the reason why you go with the treatment tank with your geomat system. Sorry, I don't know if I kind of went off on a tangent there, but.
I think that was bringing up the Title V does in fact have financial considerations as one of the rationales to grant waivers or variances under Title V. That if you get a system that's closed for 10,000, but a system that's Title V compliant is going to be 50,000, that is considered enough of a, guys pull those numbers out of nowhere. But financial considerations are part of the discussion or can be part of the Title V variance process.
Yeah.
So someone can say it's not reasonable for me to have to pay 50 grand to meet this requirement when I can get 90% there with a $10,000 system. That's simply overwhelming, and I'll never be able to afford anything, and that's worse than nothing.
Yeah.
So that is in the regs. I think that was going that the Title V regs finances is part of the discussion.
Well, it is part of the discussion, but I don't feel like a 5% increase is.
And I just wanted to call it like, it's in Title V already. I'm happy with it there, as long as we understand that somebody might come up to us with that conversation topic as we add a regulation like that, which I'm okay with.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm okay having that conversation.
So do we need a motion, or can we simply just put that on the agenda for the public hearing for the proposed one-line regulation?
Yeah, as long as everybody's in agreement. I guess we don't need a motion, but we could take one just to have it on the books.
I'll make a motion that we propose a public hearing for our next Board of Health meeting to discuss proposal of regulation regarding STS within 100 feet of wetlands.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Dan Kane.
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
Mike Selden.
Mike Selden, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes. So with Janet out, I'll figure out how that public hearing info gets posted. And okay, moving on, the memorandum of agreement for public health coordinator. So I've been in touch with Alexis, who is putting together the document. Not really based on what we had seen already, but it's based on that, but she's tweaking it a little bit. we as a board, and I told her I'd get back to her on this, had talked about kind of doing this both ways and really taking ownership of this position. But I think Dan brought up some really good points, is we want to give this person the best shot at being successful as possible, and having that professional day-to-day oversight is an important piece of it. So how I left it with Alex was that it's going to be some sort of hybrid oversight with, you know, the board having the authority to oversee and or appoint town administrator to do the oversight. And I wanted to get possibly a couple opinions and a couple ways to phrase this as the board's opinion on how this position should be overseen. If anybody has any comments on that. Go ahead, Mike.
I got things started. I think providing, assigning the member, basically to have the town administrator working with the designated person from the Board of Health is the way to go. I want to make sure, however, that it stops with the town administrator, that the town administrator can't turn around and appoint someone to stand in for his or her in that process. The only proviso without the approval of the Board of Health. That would be the only, shall we say, wobble I have in it. And Dan and Matt may feel, or you may feel very differently about this, but I don't want to lock in the next board or the next board after that into something that's unwieldy. I have no idea where the town administrator office is going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. So I'm trying to keep it functional as opposed to who's in the slot.
For me, I do agree with a lot of what Dan said. Is for this person to be successful, they need the administrative support. They need a single one up. They need that kind of stability. For us to be successful, we also need to still have some control over what's produced. I think that might be my concern, is I don't want to ask for things, or, you know, people aside come back and be like, boy, we really wish we could get X. And whether it's a monthly report of status updates for things that are ongoing, we have to be able to have some dictation to say, that's a mandate for us as a board. We need to have this. It's not up for debate. So as long as that language is built somehow where we're not controlling the person, but we need to have a part of setting expectations, not on a daily basis, but at least on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
I think the language can be built into that very easily, which, by the way, the last memorandum of understanding totally lacked. It's sort of like
that piece of, like, they report to the town administrator as a department head, but they're responsible for their practice to the Board of Health.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And their policy, it's basically policy issues, all public health policies. That covers all our brief, the Board of Health brief.
Well, and that's only where I get a little concerned, because it kind of bleeds over into that productivity of what they're actually producing, which might not necessarily be what the board. Yeah, okay, make sure you're following the policies and giving us the recommendations we expect. But I want just a little bit more, just in looking at what we've kind of historically said maybe is missing from our Neshoba service. Let's guarantee we can't be missing it with this new program.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the Neshoba thing right now. I'll wait on that. But a good idea, because if you explicitly state the duties of the public health coordinator, it will include a very, shall you say, very specific and yet broad list of function duties that basically forms the, as it were, nexus of our policy making efforts. It ranges from everything from Title V to inspections of restaurants, all the way to emergency. I mean, it goes,
Yeah, it's
covers
all in
a
the-
pretty
it's all in the
wide
job-
area. Yeah.
In the job description.
Yep.
Which is going to actually, it's a nice segue. So we should have that document. I'll update Alex tomorrow. We should have that document by our next meeting, and hopefully everybody can read through it prior to that, and we can just agree to adopt it and send it off to the select board. But I was going to take your point, Mike, and do a segue. First off, though, I didn't see very much correspondence. I feel like we're going to get a new administrator and we're going to be flooded with emails. But yeah, there wasn't.
I hate to kind of ask that logistical question, but with Janet's departure,
So a job
you should already
description-
have something in place where things that are going to her are getting forwarded to somebody responsible.
They're going to someone. I don't know who. I will find out. The job description has been posted on the town website, and one or two members of the Board of Health will be on the committee to review those folks. So we'll figure out. I think they're going to be reviewing them in like 30 days. So hopefully there's some good candidates in there. But in regards to member updates, Mike, I know you were busy and you went to the water department and found a dead end.
It wasn't, in brief, I investigated with the general approval and hopes of this board and others to see if it would be feasible to do a sampling of Littleton's wastewater. And I brought in the Corey, who's, as you probably now know, is the super of the sewer system, and also the general manager. We had a meeting with BioBot, which is the company that does the MWRA. Make a long story short, we don't have a system that will generate, that allows the generation of the kind of human samples needed in order to have a meaningful survey sampling. Regardless of the cost, it would not give us the information we're after, which is, where are we? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and in Friendly, there's another avenue where we engage with other towns around us, but I think that would be that's a longer road to take, and I didn't undertake it for the obvious reason that there's going to be a new board in about a month or so, and I think that would be a task that you may or may not decide to undertake.
And utilizing the data from the NWRA
they as much as said that they are aware, and the CDC is aware that this is and I got to tell you that is a very good early warning system for us, and
it's there already, and we don't have to recreate the wheel.
And somebody else is paying for it. And I tell you something, if we had to pay the MWRA, $50 in order to get our own version of it, it's worth every penny. So think about that. All right. The second thing I want to let you know, because it does affect a couple of things we said here, and that is that the assistant to the assistant town administrator was sent to the quarterly meeting of the Neshoba Boards of Health, and made a request that we be given a 6-month extension on the on the next contract. In other words, instead of doing a year, and unfortunately, as I expected, the Neshoba board said, no, we don't want to do that. It's going to have to be at least a year. Okay. And I tried to argue him out of that tree, but I knew going ahead of time, knowing this board, that's not going to happen. So then the question came up, how fast can we work? Because in June, we will not have a Jim Garefri or anybody.
Yeah. So let's just resign for a year.
So let me finish. So the idea was it has to go back to the board of the select board. That's model 1. And they have to agree, which they didn't want to agree originally, to a more than a 6-month extension at this point. They have to agree to a year and 6 months and maybe more. And I have not heard anything about that since. And I would ask the chair to make inquiries, because that has a long-term effect on what's going on in town, because things might pick up where we need inspections and all the rest.
Mhm.
And then this opens the door to part-timers, friends, friends of the family, that kind of stuff going on, and want to make sure that we stay, or keep our service at as high as quality as possible, because come June, it disappears.
Geez, it would have
The
been
service
really
we get.
nice if
Right.
it would have been
And-
nice if the town administrator's office let us know they were sending someone down.
They did not say, and had he consulted, and I would have warned him way ahead of time that it was not going to fly. You better be ready with something else in your pocket, and there was nothing there. So,
Well, thanks for going down.
okay, now keep in mind, and all I'm going to tell you is that if nothing else, the notion of our needing our own health officer or something very different was amplified at this meeting.
Mhm.
Okay, so
So, Mike, am I hearing you say that the trajectory we are on is that we will just be leaving the show at the end of June, or the trajectory is we have to sign for at least another year, not the 6 months we'd hoped for?
it's the trajectory we're on. If we're going to have the kind of service that we are used to from Neshoba,
That we need.
okay, it's going to have to be the year extension.
Okay.
I mean,
There's nothing wrong with that, though.
I'm not
It's better.
I'm not here to I'm just here to tell you that there was nothing unexpected except the appearance of the assistant to the and it's not his fault. It's not his fault.
Well, yeah, I agree, Kevin. I don't mind that outcome, but it should sway our current rollout plans, because financially we might not want to hire somebody nearly as quickly if we know we have an outlay to Neshoba. There's that balance we're going to have to talk about to say, how long do we double dip? How important are the service issues that we have? I think it's great. We have more time to plan, but if we hire somebody of our own right now, that might be excessive.
Okay, let me just suggest, and this is the end of my tirade here. Let me suggest the possibility of us encouraging I'm going to take a page out of the fire department's operation when they lost the chief of police and went on the search that they're going on at the moment. Let me suggest that we cajole a former health officer who may be in retirement to come on temporarily to basically fill in, including doing the sanitarian operation. And should we be so lucky in this environment to find someone to hire, also agree to provide basic training so they can qualify under the state regs to do the work for us. So yes, I think the double dip is worth it to sort of, this is the model I suspect we're going to have to fall back on, because I don't think we're going to be able to find a qualified person in a time limit of that we're operating under, even if we extend for a year.
Not for
It's
the
going to be
money
tough.
that they're offering. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Not for the money.
Yep, there's another issue here which we can also discuss if you'd like at some point, but
We'll get there.
there's a budget problem.
Mhm. Okay, well, let's get the memorandum of agreement at our next meeting for approval, and then we'll send it over to select board, and then they can post a job. And then we'll see where we're at. But I don't mind them re-signing with Neshoba for a year. I think it's great to have Jim. You sad to lose him, and while we do need more time and more of his time and energy, which he can't give, the more he's around, the better, just because as we do bring someone else in, hopefully they'll be able to learn by osmosis a little bit.
You just don't underestimate the desire of some folks to want to basically not have
Yeah,
Neshoba involved at all. But that involves a nurse also. I mean, it gets pretty unwieldy.
Mhm. Any other board member comments or updates? Go ahead, Dan.
Quick question. One, circling back, we kind of left off the 9 Drover discussion. They were going to send us plans, and I don't think we ever officially wrapped that up, did we?
What?
Did we ever wrap up that hearing? Either.
It was only discussion.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure because they were back in the discussion around
They did email me
deed
though.
restriction or not. So they don't have a approval for their plans then, because we did not vote to approve it, and they can't move forward until it's approved, and they get approved at this point, as it's been reported since we hadn't seen the plan, was a deed restriction. I just want to make sure that we had closed all the loops, because we kind of put stuff off, and then we came back to one of them, we did not come back to the other. So
I think we missed it because we didn't. He asked if we would then make the motion, and I think we kind of maybe said we would, but you're right, it's on as a discussion, not a public hearing.
So I do have the plan. I'll circulate it to everybody now.
I just want to make sure that the homeowner and the contractor don't believe that they have approval to move forward. Because I don't think we voted to approve it. So I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding with the homeowner, the contractor, or with the board, or with Jim, that it's been approved or not, or if it's, I mean, at this point, it's no change. Nothing changed tonight.
It's the one with the deed restriction, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's got to be crystal clear. Yep.
Yeah.
So
I'll email Jim and just say, yeah, we are requiring the deed restriction for this, and I'll CC you guys on it. Just don't reply all.
And then we need a public hearing to actually
do it.
Approve it next time, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Nope. I just want to make sure we're
thanks for that.
Closing all of our loops here. Kevin, you kind of started talking a little bit about trying to figure out who's owning the health@littletonmass.org email address. So just make sure, if you can just let us know, or just so we know that someone is in fact watching, because sometimes it is informational correspondence, sometimes it is board issues, matters, and sometimes it is letters of concern or, of importance that box catches everything from someone wasn't wearing gloves at, so-and-so restaurant to there's a big problem and I need some help.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not missing anything and having it be a week before someone realizes, oh, we should probably go check some mailboxes and there's been an issue that wasn't addressed, or that maybe it's sitting in the mailbox prior to our Board of Health meeting that we should have been aware of prior to taking an action. Or
there are at least 2 things tonight that we could have probably should have been forwarded to us before.
Well, but those were probably sent directly to Janet's email, because they're both of them need a solution.
Yeah.
Right. So there's
people have Janet's direct address.
Yeah, there's the generic email address. There's Janet's email address. There's stuff that goes to Jim that Jim may have forwarded someplace. Sometimes it's okay. Who is the Board of Health administrative point person for packets, paperwork, correspondence, all those pieces, so we don't lose too many things through the cracks until that position is filled. Even as simply as packet construction and those pieces, just so we don't miss things as well. Unfortunately, Gino's not here tonight, but my guess is it probably is easier for him having one big packet than trying to pull up individual emails with individual pieces of information. It certainly is easier for all of us not to miss things if it's here's the packet with all the relevant data. But so
you're not suggesting we forward all the emails to Gino and then he disperse to us?
I merely suggested having a consolidated packet is more efficient and less likely for things to be missed.
Got it.
And on the fly during a meeting, trying to go back, and that's certainly what I did as I was going back to individual emails for individual discussions or hearings. That is certainly doable, but is more challenging than in the moment. As you well know, trying to giving your email address out, try to get emails while still running a meeting and pulling them up and now sharing your screen. That is a lot of bandwidth trying to also run a Board of Health as the chair.
Yeah, I inquired to see if the town administrator had like extra time, or if she was part-time and could take on extra hours, but she just resigned too, I guess. So.
Okay. So as I say, so Janet had basically all of inspectional services as well as Board of Health, right?
Yeah.
So building inspector, the electrical inspector, the plumbing inspector, the Board of Health, all right now are without administrative support.
Well,
no, I'm just making sure that we are all aware of that. It is not just us who's in a how come, and two, that hey, now it's on record here for the community of wow, there's a gap in services of our day-to-day operations in town hall that is important for multiple layers of our day-to-day community activities. Last thing, sorry, I forgot. Minutes. Who's putting together minutes?
Well, maybe this is that opportunity that we can take to have the transcripts serve as the minutes. It'd be fantastic. Makes so much sense. I don't know, but they're due 30 days after the meeting happens, right?
I believe so. Okay.
Dave, are you doing minutes tonight?
I don't think Dave's doing minutes, but I'm hoping he recorded this because I took my scribble notes, but certainly nowhere enough to put together minutes.
Sorry, I'm not doing minutes.
Oh, all right.
It is being recorded on 2 places, so.
Awesome. Don't lose the recording because we didn't take enough notes for minutes.
And we didn't get the set from our last meeting, correct?
I don't believe so.
Did Janet get the last set before she left from the 23rd of March? I didn't see him.
Dave, what kind of transcript can you generate from this?
I don't know. I can ask Kirby.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I can identify people's voices and just, plug their names in before the comments. Let me know.
I tried playing back one of the video feeds and turn on Google AI, which I have as a beta. And I just want you to know that it suggested we attack China with nuclear weapons. So I suggest that we get a human to do this.
Yeah.
So I really don't want my hand going up, but I mean, officially, I am clerk. So without admin support, I would say minutes land on me. So as soon as Dave and the LCTV folks process and post the video, I will do my best to replay it and try to reconstruct minutes from that. I'm just not sure how else we're gonna be able to do it.
And we'll just keep the meeting shorter and say less.
Remind me that too, though. So.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Typically, the recording of the meeting is up usually the next day or the day after on the Littleton website, the streaming website, and then it usually shows up on YouTube shortly thereafter.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
I make a motion for adjournment.
1 second, Dan.
Sorry.
Click on the live transcript on the bottom menu.
View full transcript. It's there and long. I sometimes have the closed captioning running during our meetings, and it's always interesting actually watching just how Google translates or takes or puts it in.
Yeah, it's got everybody's names though.
Sorry, Zoom. It does have everybody's names.
Yeah. All right. That's my 2 cents. Mike, you were saying something.
I was going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Dan Kane.
Dan Kane, yes.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And Mike Zeldin.
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Kevin Baker votes yes.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks. A lot to do.